This year, we decided to focus on studying the harms that are fueled by intentionally misleading narratives from actors who have financial, power, psychosocial, and/or physical incentives to exploit others. We will hear from experts, for example, about assessments of multi-generational systemic economic, climate, and humanitarian damage that stems from malign cognitive influence. This focus on harms, I think, is critically important because I see disinformation, which is an intentionally deceptive speech act, as often a preparatory act to engage in an intentional associated harms or exploitation act. In other words, I see disinformation and cognitive manipulation as preparing the landscape for corruption. Across the globe and throughout history, we can see how disinformation campaigns, again, which I view typically as preparatory acts, groom vulnerable people for associated corruption like sextortion, fraud, crypto rug pulls, catfishing, sexual slavery, terroristic violence, or expansionist warfare. Disinformation, I sense, sets the stage for corruption, and I also sense that disinformation may support another widespread form of corruption to the degree that tech platforms monetize dopamine addiction. In her book, Dopamine Nation, Stanford University psychiatrist and addiction specialist Dr. Anna Lemke suggests, for example, quote, "The smartphone is the modern-day hypodermic needle." Research suggests that platforms optimize profits and user engagement with viscerally emotional narratives that center on rage and hate rhetoric. These narratives are often seeded in coordinated disinformation campaigns. Now, my psychologist colleagues suggest there's credible debate as to whether online platforms are by definition addictive, but they tend to agree they are at least habit-forming, which aligns with the psychological manipulators process steps that were outlined in a recent webinar I hosted with Diane Ben-Scoter, founder and CEO of Antidote, who is a former cult member and cult deprogrammer. Diane said that the manipulative stages are to first, you want to capture their attention, then you want to hold their attention, then you want to influence their decisions, and ultimately you want to shape their identity and their habits. If we believe these platforms are addictive, then society has long upheld profiteering off of human addiction should be considered among the most corrupt business practice. And if this is the correct framing, then tech platforms, in my opinion, should not escape the same level of scrutiny and accountability as pushers of tobacco or opiates, particularly when these platforms also hoover up very sensitive and vulnerable data volunteered by those who sustain their revenue models. In summary, I see our collective work that explores and exposes disinformation and malign cognitive influence as supporting anti-corruption. I think we offer one of the few remaining anti-corruption guardrails at this moment in history, which is why we must continue our work despite threats from very powerful and well-funded global actors who do not want us to expose or impede upon their corruption.